All right, welcome to Algebra 2 General, Child's High School, Section 6.6, Function Operations. Just to review a little bit about what function operations are, an example of a function would be y equals mx plus b. Instead of putting y equals mx plus b, you could put f of x equals mx plus b, and f of x just takes the place of y. So when we're looking at functions, we're looking at something like f of x equals x squared minus 9. Now, the g of x equals x plus 3 is just telling you, hey, this is another function. So we're going to call it g of x. And then if there was another one, we would call it h of x. It's kind of like numbering it, just a different way. All right, operations. That means add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So we're going to add them, subtract them, multiply, and then divide them. So look over to the right, and what you're going to see is there's different ways that you could write this. So you could write it together. You could say f plus g, but what you're really saying is f of x plus g of x. And then f minus g of x is really f of x minus the g of x. And then the f times g of x is saying f of x times g of x. And then when you're dividing f divided by g of x, you're really saying f of x divided by g of x. So there's just different ways that you can read them and different ways that you can write them. And the textbook shows you both of these, and you need to know that these are the same. All right. The only difference in adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing is with division. The domain is going to be all real numbers, except there's going to be an exception. With addition, subtraction, and multiplication, all three of them, the domain is going to be all real numbers. But when you get to division, it's going to be a little bit different, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. All right, so we're going to start, and we're going to do the operations of adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing f of x and g of x. So go ahead and make sure that you're either taking notes on a copy of these notes, or either you're taking them off on notebook paper. So we're going to start with this one first. F of x plus g of x. So we're going to do x squared minus 9 plus x plus 3. Now all you have to do is combine like terms and put them in descending order. So x squared is first, plus x, and then negative 9 and 3 make negative 6. So that's your answer for that, x squared plus x minus 6. All right, the next one, we're going to subtract them. Now, subtracting is a little bit different. You're still going to write your f of x first because it came first. So x squared minus 9. But when you're subtracting, your second function has to be in parentheses, x plus 3, because you have to distribute that negative. So now we're going to distribute the negative. That's x squared minus 9 minus x minus 3. Combine like terms, put them in order as well, in descending order. X squared minus x, and then negative 9 and negative 3 make negative 12. So that's the answer for that. F of x minus g of x is x squared minus x minus 12. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply. So f times g. Now, both of these have to be in parentheses when you write them. All right, so you're going to put x squared minus 9 in parentheses, and you're going to put x plus 3 in parentheses. And you can either use FOIL on this one, or you can use distribution. I'm going to use FOIL on this one. So the first one times the first one is x cubed. The outer one times the outer one is 3x squared. The inner one times the inner one is negative 9x. And the last one times the last one is negative 27. Now it just so happens they are in descending order, and I don't have to combine any like terms. All right, the last one that we're going to do is we're going to divide. So we're going to do f divided by g. So f of x is x squared minus 9. G of x is x plus 3. We have to factor x squared minus 9 into x minus 3 and x plus 3. This is where you might want to say, okay, I'm going to have to not pause the tape, but pause and think for a minute. When I'm doing division, they ask me for my domains. So my domains for the addition, subtraction, and multiplication, my domain was going to be all real numbers. But when I get to division, it's going to be different. Okay, my domain is going to be all real numbers for this problem, except I have to take the denominator and I have to say that it cannot equal 0. Let me show you where I'm at over here in yellow. Okay, g of x cannot be equal to 0. So x plus 3 cannot be equal to 0. So you're going to subtract 3 from both sides, and you're going to get that x cannot be negative 3. So with your domain, it's all real numbers except x cannot be negative 3. All right, we're going to finish solving this problem. That was kind of a side note, because if we're going to figure out what the domain is, we have to know what its restrictions are when we are dividing. All right, now go back up to your problem, f of x divided by g of x. You can cancel out the x plus 3's. So your final answer for f of x divided by g of x is x minus 3, because the x plus 3's canceled out. All right, what I want you to do is I want you to pause this video, and I want you to go down now, and I want you to do B. All right, so you had a minute to pause the video and do B. For the sake of, I don't have a lot of room, I'm going to be doing B up in the same spot where I just got finished doing A. But we're doing all the same things. We're adding them, subtracting them, multiplying, and dividing them. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to add them first. So f plus g. All right, so that's 3x squared minus 11x minus 4 plus 3x plus 1. So combine like terms, 3x squared, negative 11x, negative 3x, negative 8x, negative 4, and 1 is negative 3. All right, next we are going to subtract them. Okay, so we're going to do 3x squared minus 11x minus 4 minus, remember we have to put this in parentheses, 3x plus 1. And next we have to distribute that negative. So I'm just going to bring my f of x down, and then I'm going to distribute my negative, making negative 3x minus 1. Now combine like terms. So 3x squared, negative 11x, and negative 3x make negative 14x. And negative 4 and negative 1 make negative 5. All right, so now we've done addition, we've done subtraction, we're going to do multiplication. F times g. All right, so we're going to do 3x squared minus 11x minus 4 times 3x plus 1. Remember, they both have to be in parentheses this time. And I'm going to use distribution this time because you can't use FOIL. So I'm going to do 3x squared times 3x is 9x cubed. Negative 11x times 3x is negative 33x. Negative 4 times 3x is negative 12x. All right, next I am going to distribute times the 1. And we know anything times 1 is that thing. So I'm just going to bring down 3x squared minus 11x minus 4. Now, for some reason, I always forget my squared here. So let me go back and fix that. All right, combine like terms. We have 9x cubed. The negative 33x squared and the 3x squared make a negative 30x squared. The negative 12x and the negative 11x make negative 23x. And then we just have a negative 4. So we've combined the cubics, we've combined the squareds, and we combined the x, and there wasn't anything to combine with the constant. All right, the last one we're going to do for practice for this part is f divided by g. Okay, so that's f divided by g. That's f of x divided by g of x. So we have 3x squared minus 11x minus 4 all over 3x plus 1. Now, we're going to have to factor the top. Some people use guess and check. I don't. So I'm going to show you how to factor using what I use. And I use Xbox. So I'll go down here to the bottom right. And this is how I use Xbox. You take A times C. So you multiply 3 times negative 4. And you get negative 12. And you put it at the top of the X. And then B is negative 11. So you put it at the bottom of the X. And you ask yourself the question, what two numbers, when multiplied, give me the negative 12, but when combined, give me a negative 11? And that will be negative 12 and 1. So you put an X beside it. All right, the next thing you do when you're doing Xbox is you take the first term and put it in the first box. That's 3x squared. The last term, which is negative 4, and put it in the last box. And then take these two right here, negative 12x, and make sure you put a positive 1x. The next thing you do is you do the GCF of the column. So going down, 3x squared and negative 12x have a 3x in common. 1x and negative 4 have a 1 in common. And now you're going to do rows going left and right. And so 3x squared and 1x have just an x in common. And negative 12x and negative 4 have a negative 4 in common. So there are your two numbers. So you have 3x plus 1 is one factor, and x minus 4 is the other factor. If you want to, you can go ahead and do this and find your answer, which is x minus 4. But don't forget, you have to go back, and they said, what are the domains? The domains for the addition, subtraction, and multiplication is all real numbers. But for division, it's going to be something different. For division, you have to take your denominator and you have to say that it cannot equal 0. So you have to solve, subtract 1 from both sides. So you have 3x cannot be equal to negative 1. Divide by 3. X cannot be equal to negative 1/3. So for division, the domain is all real numbers except negative 1/3. All right, so this was part 1 of 6-6 function operations. We did one example together, and then you did one by yourself after pausing the video. So I want you to stop right now. This is going to be considered part 1 of 6.6.